These notes are on prokaryotic cells versus eukaryotic cells, looking at the different types of cells and how you can tell the difference between the two. Prokaryotic cells are what we call primitive cells, so if you look at the PR and the PR, that should give you a clue. They're not as complex, they're simple, they're smaller, and the only prokaryotic cells that we have are all bacteria. Prokaryotic cells, because they're simple, they don't have as much stuff, so they can be smaller. They have no nucleus, no organelles. The genetic material is there, but it's free floating, so the DNA is just free floating within the cell. There are ribosomes, because ribosomes are not organelles. They're cell wall and a cell membrane. Here's a picture of a prokaryotic cell. You can see here in the middle, this red stuff is the circular DNA that we find inside this bacteria. We can see that it has a cytoplasm, we see it has ribosomes, we can see that it has a cell membrane, it has a cell wall. This particular bacteria has this capsule here on the outside. It's got what we call a plasmid and pili, which are these hair-like structures that stick out from the ends. Eukaryotic cells, on the other hand, are like you and I. They're much more complex. They have more parts, so they're bigger. And we find these in animals, plants, fungi, and protists. Eukaryotic cells have a nucleus to house the DNA. They have organelles like mitochondria, chloroplasts, ER, Golgi complex, vacuoles. Depends on the type of cell, if it's plant or animal, but we find organelles. They have ribosomes just like prokaryotic cells. They have a cell membrane just like prokaryotic cells, and we find a cell wall in some of those eukaryotic cells as well. So here you can see the list of all. What they did here is they're showing you this would be an animal cell over here, and then this would be a plant cell on this side, so they're kind of showing you the difference. But here's the list of all the parts in an animal cell. Here's a list of all the parts in a plant cell. And you can see it's a lot bigger list than what we saw in that bacteria cell. So here's a side-by-side comparison. We see prokaryotic cells and eukaryotic cells. The size is much smaller for a prokaryotic cell. We see a nucleus only in the eukaryotic cell. We see ribosomes in both. We see this nucleoid region, which is our free-floating area. We see our DNA housed in a nucleus and not in there. We see cytoplasm in both. We see a plasma membrane in both. So here's a list. Prokaryotic cells have no nucleus, no organelles. They're smaller and they're simple. Both have some cell walls. There's a cell wall in prokaryotes. Some plant cells that are eukaryotic have cell walls. All plant cells do. We have genetic material. It just depends on where it is. Ribosomes found in both, a cell membrane found in both, and let's add cytoplasm here too, because that's another common one that we see. Eukaryotic cells have a nucleus. They have those various organelles. They're larger and much more complex. So when you're making your list, you and I versus primitive is what you kind of want to focus in on.